The plain stretched endless that evening, burnt gold and sorrow fading into the horizon. The wind moved slow, carrying dust and memory together, whispering through the brittle grass like it had something to confess. A lone rider emerged from that haze of dying sun. His horse limped. His coat was the color of old smoke. His name was Elias Crowe, though he hadn't spoken it aloud in months. Folks used to say his hands could draw faster than a shadow could fall. But that was before the fire in Red Hollow, before guilt made a home in his chest and refused to leave. He rode until he saw the faint outline of a small homestead, 2 fences half-built, smoke rising from a chimney too thin to promise much warmth. The place looked as tired as he felt. When he dismounted, he found a boy and a girl wrestling with a crooked fence post. The boy couldn't have been more than 19. His palms were blistered, his shoulders too thin for the weight of the work. The girl, maybe 17, wiped sweat from her brow and smiled through exhaustion. "Evenin', stranger," the boy said, wary but polite. Elias tipped his hat. "Didn't mean to intrude. Just lookin' for water. Horse is runnin' on hope." The girl pointed toward the well, her eyes soft, cautious. "You can draw what you need, sir. We've enough to share." Her name was Clara Maddox, and the boy beside her was Luke, her older brother by 2 years and by nature too protective for his own peace. As Elias filled the bucket, the rope creaked in rhythm with the cicadas. The smell of dust mixed with the faint sweetness of cornbread from the cabin. When he turned back, Clara was watching him, not with fear, but with a quiet curiosity, as if trying to see who he'd been before the world had worn him down. "Not many pass through here," Luke said as they sat him down to supper, thin stew and cornbread torn into smaller pieces to stretch it farther. "Not many got reason to," Elias replied. "This land don't offer much but loneliness." Luke gave a bitter laugh. "Sometimes that's safer than people." Elias looked up. "You runnin' from someone?" The question hung there, heavy. Luke's spoon stilled mid-air. Clara's eyes dropped to her bowl. The fire popped softly between them, the only sound brave enough to fill the silence. Finally, Luke whispered, "If they come, sir, hide my sister." He said it low, almost ashamed, like the plea of a man who'd already accepted death but couldn't bear to let innocence fall with him. Elias didn't promise. He just nodded once and looked out the window. The horizon burned red as the sun went down, the kind of red that made men remember things they'd rather forget. That night, the storm rolled in from the west, slow, deliberate, like the world was holding its breath. Elias couldn't sleep. He sat on the porch while lightning stitched the sky open and thunder rolled like judgment. Through the window, he could see Clara by lamplight, mending a torn sleeve, her hair falling loose from its braid. The scene, so simple, so human, made something ache deep inside him. Once, a woman had waited like that for him too. Once, he'd come home too late. He closed his eyes. Rain began to fall, gentle at first, then heavy, washing dust from the roof and sins from memory, though neither stayed clean for long. Luke stepped out, rifle in hand. "Can't sleep." "Sleep's for the peaceful," Elias said. Luke leaned against the post beside him. "I didn't mean to drag you into this." "You didn't," Elias replied, though the words tasted like a lie. "Men bring their own ghosts, boy. Sometimes they just find new names for 'em." Luke's voice cracked, young and frightened. "They'll come. Marshal Dugan's men. I killed one of them." Elias turned his head, eyes sharp even in shadow. "Why?" Luke swallowed hard. "He cornered Clara in town. I tried to stop him. Didn't mean to kill him. Just defended what was right," Elias murmured, cutting in softly. "A man shouldn't be punished for that." Luke's shoulders sagged, but his face stayed pale. "You don't know Dugan. He don't care about right." Elias looked out into the rain, his jaw tightening. "Men like him never do." A long silence settled. Then Luke said again, barely more than a whisper, "Sir, if they come, please hide my sister." This time Elias met his eyes. "I'll do what's right by her." The words weren't a promise, but they were enough. When the storm passed, the air was clean but heavy with that strange stillness that comes before something bad. Elias walked to the barn, his boots sinking into wet earth. He uncovered the old revolver from his saddlebag. It gleamed dull in the moonlight, the metal scarred and worn like him. He turned it in his hand, thumb tracing the engraved initials on the grip, R.H. A memory flashed: gunfire, screams, the smell of whiskey and blood. A saloon burning down in Red Hollow. A woman's voice calling his name before the flames swallowed her. He holstered the weapon again, breath trembling. Not again, he told himself. Never again. But as dawn crept up, painting the land in pale gold, the sound reached him, hoofbeats, distant yet distinct. 1, 2, then a dozen. He stepped outside. The horizon was a smear of red dust and rising sun. The Maddox cabin stood small but stubborn against the vastness of the plains. Luke and Clara were still asleep, unaware that the day had already chosen its shape. Elias exhaled slowly. His hand brushed against the revolver at his hip, old instinct meeting old shame. He looked toward the light breaking over the horizon and whispered, almost to himself, "Ashes never really stay buried." The wind carried his words across the fields like prayer or warning. It was hard to tell which. And as the hoofbeats grew louder, echoing like war drums across the dawn, Elias Crowe, the man who'd once sworn never to fight again, straightened his shoulders and waited. Sometimes the past finds you not to punish you, but to see if you've changed enough to stand before it. Morning broke soft and silver, the storm long gone but its ghosts still clinging to the land. Mist floated low across the prairie, curling around the Maddox cabin like a secret refusing to leave. Elias Crowe rose early. He'd always done so, a habit left from the days when sleep came easy and dawn meant another chance to live right. Now, it only meant another chance not to run. He found Luke out by the corral, struggling to fix a loosened hinge on the gate. The boy's hands were cut from wire, his knuckles raw but steady. Elias wordlessly joined him, passing a hammer without being asked. Luke glanced up. "You don't have to help." Elias shrugged, eyes on the work. "Not much worth doin' alone in this world." They worked in silence for a while. The sound of metal striking would fill the air, steady and rhythmic. When the hinge finally held, Luke exhaled in relief. "Thank you," he said. Elias gave a small nod. "You hold that rifle yesterday like a man who's never fired one proper." Luke flushed, embarrassed. "I haven't had much reason to, till now." "Then today's the day you learn." They spent the morning in the open field behind the cabin. The air was crisp, grass shimmered wet from the rain. Elias set up a few bottles on a log, handed Luke the gun, and said simply, "Breathe before you pull. Not after." The first shot went wide. The second, too. Elias stepped behind him, voice quiet but firm. "Don't fight the tremble. Let it move through you. Fear's just a sign your soul's still alive." Luke steadied. This time, the bottle shattered. The boy smiled, the kind of smile that comes not from pride, but from relief. "Maybe I ain't hopeless after all." Elias's mouth twitched in something like amusement. "No man's hopeless who's willing to learn." From the porch, Clara watched, sunlight painting her hair in gold. When she smiled, it was soft, unguarded. Elias caught it from afar and quickly looked away, feeling a warmth he hadn't invited. By noon, the air grew still and hot. They shared lunch under the lone oak tree. The earth smelled of clay and promise. Clara passed Elias a cup of coffee, her fingers brushing his briefly, an accident, but enough to stir something gentle and dangerous in both of them. "You fixed the hinge," she said, sitting beside him. "Luke did most of it." "You taught him." He gave a faint grin. "Boy's got more heart than sense. Reminds me of someone I used to be." She looked at him then, really looked. "Who was he?" Elias hesitated. His eyes drifted toward the horizon. "A fool who thought he could outrun his past." Clara's voice softened. "Maybe you haven't outrun it, Mr. Crowe. Maybe you've just been circling back to finish it." For a long time, he said nothing. Only the wind answered, whispering through the dry stalks of corn. That evening, a trader passed through, a ragged man with a mule and a mouth that ran like whiskey. He sold them salt, flour, and news. "Marshal Dugan's men been ridin' near the ridge," he warned, spitting tobacco into the dirt. "They're lookin' for a boy named Luke Maddox. Word is, They aimed to hang him for killin' one of their own. Clara's face went pale. Luke's jaw tightened. Elias said nothing, only stared at the traitor until the man grew nervous and moved along. When the dust settled behind the mule's tail, Clara turned on Elias, her voice shaking. "We can't stay here. We have to go." Luke slammed his fist on the table. "Run again. They'll follow us till we die tired." Her eyes flashed with fear. "You don't understand what these men can do." Elias finally spoke, voice low and certain. "Running don't change what kind of man you are when they find you." The words hit like a stone dropped in still water, slow, heavy, spreading truth. Clara looked between them, torn between terror and belief. "So what do we do?" Elias met her eyes. "We stand. Quietly. Strong. Like the land itself." That night, the air held a strange stillness, the kind that comes before a storm or a miracle. The three of them sat by the fire. Luke carved wood into the shape of a horse. Clara stitched a patch into Elias's torn sleeve. "Your father teach you to ride?" Elias asked quietly. Luke shook his head. "He died when I was little. Ma raised us on stories more than saddles." "What kind of stories?" "The kind where good men win." Luke smiled faintly. "Never told us what it costs them." Elias gazed into the flames, voice rough with memory. "Every good man pays for his mercy, one way or another." Silence again. The fire popped, throwing sparks like falling stars. Clara spoke softly, almost to herself. "If we run all our lives, what kind of people will we be when it ends?" Her words hung in the smoke, quiet, resolute, brave. Elias looked at her, and for the first time, he didn't see fear. He saw strength. A mirror to what he'd lost long ago. Later, when the others slept, Elias walked out into the night. The sky was clear, scattered with stars so bright they looked close enough to touch. He leaned against the fence post, lighting a cigarette, though it burned more from habit than want. From inside the cabin came the faint sound of Clara humming, the same melody she'd sung the night before, now softer, like a lullaby for the wounded. Elias closed his eyes. Maybe this is what peace sounds like, he thought. Not silence. Just something worth protecting. He flicked the cigarette into the dirt, its ember dying in the cool wind. And when he looked toward the ridge, far in the distance, he saw it, a flicker of lanterns moving through the darkness. 12 riders, maybe more. The Calloway gang. He didn't wake the others. Not yet. There was still a little night left to breathe in, still a few precious minutes before the world changed again. The prairie was silent except for the hum of insects and the low rustle of wind. Elias leaned on the post, hand resting lightly on the revolver at his side, the same one he'd promised never to use again. He whispered to the darkness, half a prayer, half a confession. Not for blood. Not this time. For mercy. And the stars above him blinked faintly, as if listening. Out here, under a sky too wide for lies, hearts don't change in thunder or gunfire. They change in the quiet, when a man finally stops running, and a woman's voice reminds him that even ashes can still hold warmth. The morning came blood-red. The kind of dawn that doesn't rise, it bleeds. Dust gathered like ghosts over the prairie, curling in long, mournful ribbons as 12 riders advanced through it. Their shadows stretched tall and thin against the light, like a line of judgment approaching the guilty. Elias Crowe stood outside the Maddox cabin, coat fluttering in the rising wind. His face was still, unreadable, but his eyes, steady as iron, watched the ridge with quiet knowing. Inside, Clara was packing what little they owned into a cloth bundle. Her hands trembled, though her lips whispered a prayer that belonged to no church, just faith born of fear and love. Luke checked his rifle for the 100th time, jaw tight. "Sir," he whispered through the doorway, voice breaking. "They're comin', ain't they?" Elias didn't look back. "They are. What do we do?" Elias's voice was low, almost gentle. "You stand behind that door and don't shoot till they cross the fence. And whatever happens, Clara stays safe." Clara's voice came from behind, firm now. "I'm done hiding." Elias turned then, his gaze soft but unyielding. "You can't stop a storm by yellin' at the thunder, miss. You survive it by holdin' on to what matters. She met his eyes. And what matters, Mr. Crowe? He looked toward Luke, then back at her. That you too live. That the world remembers mercy, not fear. The Calloway gang came like a plague, coats dark, rifles slung low, faces carved by the wind and cruelty. At their center rode Marshal Dugan, his badge gleaming dull under the red sun, his smirk carved deep as sin. "Well, I'll be," Dugan drawled, reining in his horse. "Didn't expect to find you playin' house, Crowe. Heard you died in Red Hollow." "Maybe I should've," Elias said quietly. Dugan chuckled, cold. "Ain't no should've about it. You burned a saloon full of my men that night, didn't you? Left me with one less eye and one hell of a grudge." Elias's voice was flat. "Then maybe it's time to bury it." "Bury it?" Dugan's laughter tore through the stillness. "Boy inside that house killed my deputy. Ain't no buryin' that." Elias stepped forward, his shadow falling long over the dirt. "He was protectin' his sister. You call that murder? You ain't fit to wear that badge." Dugan's good eye narrowed. "You plannin' to stop me, Crowe?" Elias's fingers brushed the worn leather of his holster. "No, Marshal. I'm plannin' to stand." The standoff. The air tightened, silent, heavy, trembling like the earth itself was holding its breath. Then came the first shot, Dugan's man, too eager. The sound cracked across the plains like God splitting the sky in two. Elias moved, not fast like legend told, but precise, measured. His revolver sang once, twice. 2 men fell before their bodies even knew they were dead. Inside, Luke flinched at the gunfire. Clara grabbed his sleeve. "Don't," she begged. "He's giving us a chance." But Luke shook her hand off, eyes burning. "No. I won't let him die alone." He burst through the door, rifle raised. The fight turned wild, smoke, shouts, dirt flying. Bullets whined like angry hornets through the air. The world narrowed to flashes of light and breath and blood. Luke fired, dropping a man who'd flanked Elias. "Get back!" Elias shouted, but it was too late. A shot rang. Luke stumbled. He fell to his knees, eyes wide with disbelief, blood blooming bright on his shirt. Clara's scream cut through the chaos. She ran to him, cradling his head in her lap. Elias turned, something ancient and terrible waking inside him. The man who shot Luke aimed again, but Elias was faster. The gun flashed once, and the killer fell. Dugan sneered. "There's the Crowe I remember." Elias's voice was a graveyard whisper. "Not anymore." He advanced slowly, the world narrowing to just the two of them. Dust rose around their boots like smoke from Judgment Day. "You think you're a savior now?" Dugan spat. "You're still the butcher of Red Hollow." Elias stopped a few paces away, eyes calm. "Maybe. But a man can die tryin' to be better than he was." Both men fired. The sound echoed across the plains. 1 heartbeat, 2 bullets, silence. When the dust cleared, Dugan was face down in the dirt. Elias stood swaying, blood staining his side. He holstered his revolver with shaking fingers and turned toward the cabin. Aftermath. Clara was kneeling beside Luke, tears cutting clean paths down her dust-covered face. "He's alive," she whispered, clutching his hand. "He's alive, Mr. Crowe." Elias sank beside them, voice rough with exhaustion. "Then hold on to that, miss. Don't let go." Luke's eyes fluttered open. He looked up at Elias, pale but smiling faintly. "Did we stand tall, sir?" Elias brushed a hand across the boy's hair. "You did, son. You stood taller than most men ever will." Luke nodded weakly, his breath shallow. "Guess Ma was right. Good men win. Sometimes." Elias's throat tightened. "Sometimes," he whispered. "But not without cost." As the sun climbed, the prairie turned gold again, dust settling like a sigh. The gang lay scattered and still. Dugan's badge glinted useless in the dirt. Clara helped Elias to his feet, her hands trembling as she pressed a cloth against his wound. "You'll die if you stay," she said. He looked at her with the gentlest smile. "I already have, ma'am. Long time ago." She shook her head, tears falling. Then what was all this for? Elias looked toward Luke, toward the cabin, toward the horizon itself. For something worth protectin'. For the chance to do one thing right before the end. He turned to leave, but Clara caught his sleeve. "Don't go." He paused, eyes soft with a kind of sorrow that looked almost like peace. "If I stay, the past stays with me. Best it drifts off with the wind." He touched her cheek, gentle as the morning light. "You take care of him. Take care of yourself." And then he stepped into the open plain, sunlight wrapping him like a farewell. Epilogue: The lesson beneath the dust. Weeks later, the prairie was green again. The Maddox cabin stood stronger, Luke healing, Clara tending the fields. At night, when the wind brushed through the wheat, she swore she could still hear hooves, slow, steady, fading westward. Some said they saw a lone rider near the mountains, moving toward the setting sun, his coat torn, his hat low. Others said he died that day. But those who'd met him spoke differently. They said he found peace, not in salvation, but in choosing mercy when the world demanded violence. Maybe that's all the West ever asked of us, to stand tall when the world bends low. To draw no gun unless it's for grace. To remember that even a man made of ash can still glow once more beneath the horizon.